Hi everyone, welcome back to another For Those Who Code video. This channel is where we learn and share skills about design and development. If you want to grow your skills and learn new things that's coming up, please like, share and subscribe for more. In this video, we'll be understanding about 10 most useful JavaScript shorthand syntax which we can write with the help of modern JavaScript features today. With this approach, we can save a lot of code writing effort and write cleaner code. So let's get started. So first of all, I would like to use an extension inside of VS Code here, and the extension that I'll be using is Coca. So you can easily find that extension in the marketplace, and you can install coca.js. And after installation of coca.js, currently I'm using a free version of coca.js, and you can hit shift command and P and go to new JavaScript file. And I guess others are a premium version where a new JavaScript file currently is a free version that we can use, and it's free to use. It's really great that we can execute JavaScript inside of VS Code itself, and we don't need to go to browser and switch to VS Code and go to browser here and there. Now, the first feature that we want to discuss about is the split operator. Split operator is the three dots that you may have seen before if you are familiar with modern JavaScript features. The split operator can be used on iterables like a string or an array, and it will put the contents of the iterables into individual elements. Okay, first of all, let's try to use this particular split operator for arrays. Well, I have created a constant which is a new array, and this is generally old way of declaring a variable, and so I will just remove this one, and it's better to use this which is a much more modern and much cleaner. So I will remove this one, and I have created a variable which is sentence, and it contains a collection of strings inside an array, and it's I love coding, and this is the shortcut way of declaring a variable array. And if we console log this particular sentence right here, then we can see the output right here printed, which is I love coding, and also printed here, which is I love coding. And this is generally from Coca, so it's great, right? uh, and as you can see here, it's expanding an array, and it's getting the read of this array itself. So this is how we can make the use of split operators if we want to get the read of array and bring everything inside an array into one. So let's take a look at what if we want to convert string into a character list. So if you want to convert strings into character list, then we can use the same split operator like this. So I have created a constant which is coders, and if I use the split operators for this particular string right here, and we get this which is pretty much a reverse thing that we saw before. And this is how if you want to convert string into character list, then split operators is really handy. So now let's talk about combining multiple arrays into one. There are generally multiple ways that you can combine arrays into one, but here is just a simple example how we can use concat method that we can use to concat or bundle down arrays into one. So we have a variable languages, which is TypeScript, JavaScript, and languages add, which is Python and Go, and another variable which is C languages, and I have concatenated this language add with the help of .concat method. So if we console log C languages, then we can see here everything has been concatenated into one, right? So this is also how we can make the use of .concat method to join arrays into one. But the short and modern way of doing this would be making the use of a modern JavaScript feature which is spread operator. Here we have the same two variables, and we are using the spread operator and printing out this right here. And as you can see here, without the need for the concat method, we are just making the use of dot 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 and dot 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 spread operators and console logging the value out here. And it's this same thing that we can see here. This would be much better if you want to merge multiple arrays into one. So another thing that you can also do to merge multiple arrays into one is to make the use of dot push method. So a dot push method, the bad thing about this is it will mutate the original array. And as you can see here, we have the language array that push language array add. And if we print out the language array, which we have defined here, which needs to be just TypeScript and JavaScript, but we can see here it prints out a new array. So this generally says that it's mutating the original array itself. So this is how we can really make the use of the spread operator, bring down multiple arrays into one. So let's talk about combining multiple objects into one object. So I will just remove everything, and I have already prepared the snippet for it, and I'll just bring it here. So shorthand way of combining multiple objects into one object would be uh, obviously using this spread operator. As you can see here, we have language object right here, which is an object with key value pairs, and we have another variable defined, which is also an object, and inside here we have made the use of this spread operator, and we have paste the variable name for language object inside here. So if we print out language object add, then it would bring down all the objects into one. Spread operators are really useful for taking down multiple arrays and multiple objects into one. We can also achieve this via object.assign method from ES6 features, but object destructuring with spread operator of ES8 is much more cleaner and shorter for this one. So now let's talk about another example that we want to focus is copying arrays and object. Regarding copying arrays and object, we have words, which is an array, and if we spread words and assign it to a constant, which is words new, and print out words new, it would be a copy of words. So we are not mutating words, but it's making the copy of words. And we have another constant, which is words newer, and which we spread words and add greedy to this. And if we console log words newer, then what we can see here is coding is fun really, and words new is coding is fun, and words is coding is fun. So as we can see here, the words is just as it is, so it's not mutated, and words newer is a new array that has been returned with this spread operator, including this string really. So it's really helpful for us to make the copy of arrays. We can also achieve the same using dot push method. So let's try to uncomment this one, and words newer, let's delete this one, and words dot push words new, and let's add just a string here, um, great, and then we can see here words new is great, and words newer would be and if we print out words newer, then we can see here it's just 4, which is that our words, if printed out, is uh, uh, is all the things that we want to bundle into one, in a sense, where we have all the strings inside an array. So this particular words is printed out here, and it contains all the string that we need, which in other words says that it's being mutated. Spread operators are a great way to make the use of inside while writing our code. The next feature that we want to highlight about is destructuring. Destructuring is a convenient way of extracting multiple values from a data stored in possibly nested objects and arrays. When we are working with any popular web framework, then there is a chance we'll be making the use of array or data in the form of object literals to pass information between components and APIs. In short, this useful feature allows us to get individual pieces of array and objects with less code. So let's see this in action, where we have implemented some destructuring here. And if you take a look at the longhand imports, then we can see here we have variable which is a use state which is required from React, and also useRef is required from React library. So if you are used to React, then you may have used destructuring before, obviously. So this can be also be used inside plain JavaScript projects as well. This feature is a JavaScript feature which is used inside React. So we have another thing which is variable loading, and which is this.props.loading, which takes down the props passed down, which is loading. And another is errors, which is this.props.errors. And the shorthand version for this one would be import useState and useRef from React. So we are generally making the use of destructuring and taking out useState and useRef from React library. And also here is the another line, which is the short form of this, which is const loading and errors from this.props, which means it's taking loading and errors from the props, and it's destructuring it in order to use inside that particular component or that particular file. So let's move on to another concept of destructuring, which is destructuring an array. So if you want to destructure an array, then we can destructure an array with the help of uh, this approach, where we have languages, variables, and other we have another uh, variables that we have defined, which is first lang and second lang. And if you have noticed, we have comma here, and we have just a gap there. So which generally means that we are skipping the index first, which is this is 0 and this is first. We're skipping the index first in this case, and we are naming or destructuring this particular languages. And if we console log first lang and second lang, then we can see the 0 and the uh, first index, the second index. So which is JavaScript and Python. So this is how we can destructure anything that's inside an array. Now let's take a look at how we can destructure objects. So here is the snippet of code that I have to see how we can destructure object in an older way, or in other words, the longer way. So we have a variable called coder gang, and inside there we have a key value pair, which is gang name, and the value is coding passionates, and established is 2019. And if you can see here, we have another variable and call it gang name, which is a coder gang dot gang name. So we are accessing the value inside this particular object right here. And next one is established, which is coder gang dot established. And if we console log this gang name and established, then we can access the values inside of it. So this can be achieved in much simpler and cleaner way with the modern approach of destructuring. And with the modern approach, we could write this particular code with this one. So if we want to use destructuring inside of object, then we could access that particular um, key inside of here, and also add established new inside of here, and we could access that particular value with the help of gang name new and also established new. So it prints out the same value that we need. And with this approach, we can make the use of destructuring and make our code much more cleaner and easier to understand. So let's take another example of destructuring a nested object. So to destructure nested objects, we could also use the same kind of concept of destructuring that we saw before. So we have a variable named programmer, and inside here we have a name, experience, languages, and inside languages we have another object of A and B. Um, and we have created a constant, and we have the name and languages, and inside languages we have just A. So by console logging just A, then we can access JavaScript, and console logging name we can access Ben. This is how we can make the use of destructuring for nested objects and make our code much more cleaner and easier to understand. So let's take another example of destructuring an array from a function. So we can also destructure array from a function, and if we take a look at this particular code snippet right here, then we have a function which is add and multiply, which takes a and b as a parameter, and we are passing 2 and 3 as an argument here to our function. So this particular function returns a plus b and a into b, because we are adding a plus b and also multiplying a into b. So if we destructure and add sum and multiply to this one, which in a sense is we are referencing this sum with a plus b and multiply with a multiply by b. So if we console log sum and multiply, we get the exact number, which is the sum and the multiplication of the two digits. So this is how we can make the use of destructuring inside a function as well. So let's move on to another feature of modern JavaScript that we can use today. So what are loops? First of all, loops are really common, and it's a handy process in order to run the same code over and over again, and each time with the different values. So often this is the case when we are working with arrays. All right. So while working with loops, we have older way of iterating over loops and a modern way of iterating over loops. So let's take a look at the older way of iterating over loops. So we have a variable named languages, and we have an array of strings, and we have JavaScript, TypeScript, and Python inside here. And we declare another variable and call it lang, which is just an empty string for now. And we have here a for loop, which iterates over the language's length, and if 0, 1, and 2, it iterates over the languages, and it's printing out the lang here. And as you can see here, we have JavaScript, JavaScript, TypeScript, and JavaScript, TypeScript, and Python. This is an older way of iterating over an array. And let's take a look at some modern and short way of iterating over an array. I will just replace this one with this one. And as you can see here, the code is much more cleaner and shorter here. So we have a variable here, which is languages new. We have just made the use of for, again, with let languages of languages new. And if we print out languages here, then we can see JavaScript, TypeScript, and Python. This is how you can iterate over an array easily without the older way that we saw before. So let's also take a look at another way of accessing index inside of loops if needed. We want to access the index of the iteration loop that we are making, then we can do something like for lit index in languages index, then we get the index for the each loop that we have here, and which is 0, 1, and 2. So this is how we can access the index inside of loops. So now let's also take a look at how we can access object with keys as well. So shorthand for accessing object with keys. Here is a snippet for it, where we have a constant, and we have a for loop, and it's key in languages object. So this is the object. This is the variable where we have all the object. So, and we are console logging the key and also languages object. So inside of our key, we can see the all key that we have here, and inside the language object we can see all the value that we have here. So this is how we can access the key and the value with the for loop using the modern sort syntax. So now let's take another example where we'll be using for each method to loop down the array. We can also do the same with for each. So um, we have the variable right here, and we are using dot for each method, and inside here we are passing down the element, index, and array. And array consists of all the thing that we have here, and index is the index, and element is the element. So we have JavaScript, which is the element, 0 is the index, and the array is the array right here. So this is how you can access any array or index or element inside of an array. So let's take another example on how we can use a higher order function like .map to loop down the array. So we can, if you are not aware about the higher order function, there are a couple of higher order functions that you can use, like map, filter, and so on. So that you can make the use of somewhat, you are looping down the array ultimately. So here we have this variable, and we are mapping down with the name, and we are printing out the name. If we can see here, we have JavaScript, TypeScript, and Python printed out to the console. And for example, we have this experience, and if we want to map down the language mapping dot map and names and get the index, and as you can see here, we are console logging the names as well as the index of this experience here, where in a sense we have language experience kind of relationship that we can see here: JavaScript 5, TypeScript 2, and Python 1. This is how we can iterate with .map, which is a higher order function. And now the next thing that we want to discuss about is a cool trick that I want to show you, which is for the loop trick. So if we are looping down some items like I is equal to 0, I is greater than I, E, and 2. In this case, it's basically E2 is we have two zeros after 1. So if we place IE3, then it says we have 3 0 after 1. So this is how you can have a short form of this trick in looping down your arrays. Now let's move on to another feature that we want to discuss, which is optional chaining. Well, first of all, optional chaining is this symbol that we can see here, which is question mark and a full stop operator. It is like a dot chaining operator, except that instead of causing an error, it will reference nullish, null or undefined. The expression short circuit with a return value of undefined. So to make it clearer, I have another definition ready with me, which is the optional chaining is a safest way to access nested object properties, even if an intermediate property doesn't exist. When it's possible that a reference or function may be undefined or null. So in case of there is no property which doesn't exist, we have a fallback for that one, which will be returned as undefined or null. Let's make it clearer. So the optional chaining operator immediately stops, and which is called short circuit, the evaluation if the left part doesn't exist. And so if there is any further function calls or side effects, they don't occur. To make it more clear, we have here, which is a snippet which makes the use of optional chaining. Inside here we have a programmer's object, and inside here we have a freelancers object, and inside freelancers we have names, and outside of freelancers we have full-time and names. So if you want to access programmers.name.a, then that property doesn't exist because we are going through the object, which is programmers. We have this, and dot names. We don't have really dot names after digging down inside the object of programmers. So this doesn't exist. So in that case, what we can do is programmers, and we can use this optional chaining where if there is no programmers, neither a full-time nor names, then we can have our fallback string which says no full-time coders, right? So if we console log this one, then we would definitely get that particular thing, which is no full-time coders, because if we are basically chaining down the these nested object, and if there is nothing inside here, then we will print out something in the right. So that's what we call it here. The evaluation, if the left part doesn't exist, it will immediately stop its execution, right? And we have uh, implemented this one here. So we can also implement this not just for object, but also for functions and constructor calls. For example, we have a user admin, and inside here we have a function where it's just an admin, and it just console logs I'm admin. And if we have something like um, this user guest.admin, then it doesn't do anything because we don't have anything like this, right? Because we have user guest and it's an empty object right here. So if we comment this one and if we uncomment this one, then we can see here the effect of optional chaining, where user admin.admin, and we have this optional chaining, and we have this thing right here which console logs the admin right here. So this particular thing will take into effect if we have user admin.admin, and if it doesn't have, then it will just throw out undefined. Now let's discuss about another feature, which is short circuit or operator. Well, this kind of operator is really handy when assigning a variable value to another variable. We may want to ensure that the resource variable is not null, undefined, or empty. In that case, this operator really comes in handy. To understand it much better, we can either write a long if statement with a multiple condition or use a short circuit evaluation in this case. So let's take a look at the long version of this without using this operator. So in a case where we have something like if user1 is not null, or user1 is not undefined, or user1 is not empty string, we execute this right here. If this condition fulfills or doesn't fulfills, we have a note here, doesn't fulfills, then this executes, uh, in a sense where if it's not null or not undefined or not empty, then it executes this. This can be rewritten with a short version. So how can we write this in a short version? So let's take a look at a short version right here. So for example, we have user1 and user2 is equal to user1 or bar. So if we say user2 is strictly is equal to bar and it says true, and if we assign user1 is equal to AQ, then it says false, because it's basically what it's doing is it's checking between this and this, and um, uh, generating or giving us a boolean value of true and false. So if we remove this one and call it bar, then this would be true. So I hope you got the point, that it returns a boolean value when the condition is met. So how can we further um, go and understand this one? So we have another snippet here. We have user1 is equal to foo and user2 is equal to user1 or bar. In this case, it returns foo because we have user1 which is foo, and if we change the value of user1, it prints out here, and if it's just bar, then we have a bar here. So I hope you got the point where we can make this handy in a case where we want to check undefined, null, or empty string here. So if we take this to empty string, it will go to bar. And if we take this to empty string, we will have bar here, right? So this is really handy in a case where we want to check or ensure these things, which is null, undefined, or empty, right? So let's take a look at another longhand version, how we can make the use of this one. So I think if you are pretty much familiar with Node and Express environments, you may have worked on this before, where we declared a variable and named it current env, and process.env current env is the environment variable that we are trying to access inside of our file. If the environment is this one, if it's equal to the current env, then we have this. If else, then we have our environment as localhost. So this can be rewritten with a short version, and this can be something like this. So the current env is equal to process.end.current env, and this or operand symbol where we have the localhost, right? So this is how we can make the use of short circuit or operand operator. So this basically say that if the process.env is not current env, then um, this take this into action, right? So if it's just if and else, so if it's not the case, then this is the case. So I hope you got the concept behind operator, short circuit evaluation, and logical OR operator. So this comes really handy in these cases. So now let's move on to another feature that we want to cover, and which is conditional rendering. Well, conditional rendering, first of all, is a simple if-else statement where we show something if true, else show something if it's false, right? This is really easy to achieve, and the longer way of achieving this would be uh, something like this, which is a simple if-else statement. If 1000 is greater than 100, then print console log this one. If else, console log this one. Well, this is also fair code. This is also a workable code, and there's nothing wrong with this one, but we can make this cleaner and make this much shorter. So the shorthand version of this particular thing would be this one, where we console log IE3. We discussed this before, where we have 1 and 3 zeros after 1 and 1 and 2 zeros after 1. And if it's uh, greater than IE2, if IE3 is greater than IE2, then we print out this one, else we print out this one. If you are pretty much familiar with React, you may have written this piece of code inside of JSX. This can be implemented in any modern JavaScript code base that we have, not just React. So let's go to another version of only if syntax. What if we want to achieve or we just have a if statement, right? So if we just have a if statement, then this can be achieved with a longer way like this, where we have 2000 is greater than 200, then print this one. And there's nothing wrong obviously with this code. This can be much more better and much more concise with this syntax right here, where we console log to E3 is greater than to E2, and if it's true, then we execute or print this one. So this is how we can achieve our conditional rendering if else statement with the shorter syntax version. So now let's hop into another if else statement inside of nested objects. Now if you take a look at this piece of code, now in a case where we want to have our if else statement inside of nested block, then we can achieve it with something like this, where we have declared a variable called num1, and we have another variable called check greater. If num1 is greater than 20, we have greater than 20, else we have this one again less than 20 and between the range. So basically this adds if statement here, where we can see here that if console log check greater, it's less than 20. If we have greater than 20, and if we have just 20, then between the range of 5 and 20. So I hope you got the point that we have uh, a, a conditional check of this one, where if it's 20, then it prints out between the range of 5 to 20. If it's more than 20, it's greater than 20, and if it's less than 20, it prints out it's less than 20. So this is pretty much how we can achieve it with multiple nested if else statement. So now let's move on to another feature that we can have, shorthand syntax that we can write with object conditions. For example, we have a variable x, which is 30, and we have another variable which is big, and if it's if x is greater than 30, then it's true. Basically it acts as a key value pair, and if this is true, it returns true. If it's false, it returns false. And we have this false, and we have this, and if we console log big, then we can see here true, false, um, false, true. And then if we change this to 40, then this would be false, true, and if change this to 30, this would be false, true, and if it's changed to 0, then this would become false, false, and if this more than or less than 30, then it would be true. So this is how we can achieve object conditionals. So now let's move on to another feature, which is arrow functions, the classical functions that are really easy to read and write in their plain form, but they do tend to become a little verbose and confusing once we start nesting them in other function calls. With the use of arrow functions, we can return the value directly without having to write a return statement. But whereas without the use of arrow functions, we need to add a return statement. There is a lot of difference between with arrow functions and without arrow functions, which we won't be really diving into, but we'll be discussing about how we can write our longhand syntax with arrow functions easily. So let's suppose we have add numbers, which is a function which adds a and b, and it generally returns a plus b, which is the addition of two parameters and a and b. And we have another function which is a set timer function, and which executes after 3000 millisecond, and it's just controlling this is logged. And another which is list, which is an array. Inside here we have strings, and it's just looping down the list dot for each function and taking items, and console logging the items here. So these are some of the basic ways of writing a function without an arrow function. And as we can see here, we have the return statement here, but we don't have any return statement here because we are just logging out here. So this can be rewritten with a sorted syntax, obviously, with the help of arrow functions. So let's add this, and let's quickly take a look at how we can write this with arrow functions. Add numbers just takes a and b, and we are console logging a plus b. So we discussed about it doesn't need a return statement, right? And there are a lot of benefits of arrow functions, and obviously we don't need to specify this keyword inside of arrow functions as well. So we have this add numbers, and it's 30, and this which adds this two numbers here, and set timeout is also changed to an arrow function where we have console log loaded, and it's 2000 millisecond. It's executed after 2000 millisecond. It will be executed. And another function is this list, list dot for each, which takes items, and we are just console logging the items. So I hope you got the point where we can make the use of arrow functions when necessary, and it comes really handy, and it's really cleaner syntax, obviously. So let's take a look at how we can work with object longhand syntax. Um, Regarding the object longhand syntax, we have this const e, which is a variable defined, which is 1 to 3, and b is 3 to 1. And we are writing a and assigning it to a, and we are writing b and assigning it to b. So if we console log this particular object, as you can see here, we are console logging obj with a number and b number, which is the output is right here, a 1 to 3, b 1 to 3. And if you want to improve this and make it a shorter and cleaner syntax, then we can write console.log obj new, and just add a and b there, because we don't need to specify this colon and a and colon and b, as by default it acts like it's for this value that we have. So it's a comma b, and it would print a 123 and b 3 to 1. So I hope you got the point. Let's discuss about another feature that we want to also consider about is default parameters. So default parameters are just the parameters which needs to be by default added. For example, we have a function named add, and it takes test1 and test2 as a parameter. And if test1 is strictly is equal to undefined, then this addition functionality can be written as add, and test1 is equal to 4 and test2 is equal to 21. So we are just adding the default parameter to this one, and test1 plus test2. Then if we don't pass any arguments to test1, neither test2, then it will take this 4 and 21 as its default value. So we have console log add, which executes to 25. So we haven't passed anything here because we have the default parameter added here, which is 21 plus 4 is 25. I hope you got the point. So now let's move on to another feature that we will be discussing about, which is number conversion. So regarding the shorthand syntax we can use with the number conversion, there are basically some of the concepts that we need to understand in order to use it in a couple of things that we write. So the first thing is parse int. The parseInt function parses a string and returns an integer. The longhand string to number can be written as just simply this one, where we have a variable which is num1, and we have made the use of this particular function right here, which is parseInt, which converts a string to an integer, right? So we have this string and it's converting us to integer right here. As you can see here, it's executed here, also here, and we can rewrite this and make it much more cleaner. This can be also written as just adding a plus sign in front of this particular string that we have. Yeah, the plus sign will change this to number. So a plus sign with the string will change that particular string to a number. So let's move on to another feature where we want to discuss about math.floor. So the math.floor method returns the largest integer less than or equal to a given number. So in this particular example, we have 123.67. So if we add math.floor and pass down the num3 here inside this particular method, then we get 123. And if we go to 99, then it's just 123 because it just rips down dot 99 for us. So this can be rewritten in a sense a much more cleaner way, where we can write console.log and add two tide symbol here. Tide, in a sense, we have a curly symbol of a tide right here. So if we add a two tides symbol in front of this variable, then it converts this to a number which is largest integer less than or is equal to the given number. So this is how we can make the use of this particular symbol in front of the numbers we want to change. Now let's take a look at another feature that we can use, which is math.pow. The math.pow method returns the base to the exponent power, that is a base exponent. And the longhand how we can write this is math.pow 2, 4, which would be 2 to the power 4, and which would be 16. And this can be rewritten as 2 asterisk asterisk 4, which basically says 2 to the power 4, which is 16. So this is how you can write a cleaner syntax for math.pow method. So now let's move on to another feature that we can use, which is template literals. Well, the template literals is pretty much popular feature that we can use today, and it's much more cleaner rather than to concat with just a plus symbol and to add a quotation in between. Template literals is just a backtick, and we can access the variables inside that backtick with dollar and curly braces to enclose our variables. For example, we have a variable named user, which is a string, and as you can see here, we have this particular block of string concatenated with this particular, let's say, a variable which is not been defined here, but it's a variable, and it's been concatenated to a space string, and again last name, and a full stop string. So this can be written much more in a cleaner way, where we can just add backticks and access the variables inside here, which should be first name and last name. So this should be a first name and this should be a last name. So it would be a backticks, and we can access the variables inside this backticks with the dollar and curly braces. This is how you can make the use of template literals inside of your code. So guys, in this video we understood and learned about some of the useful shorthand syntax and features that we can use inside our code base today. I hope you can write cleaner and better code now. Thank you so much for watching my videos. If you guys want to learn more about design and development stuff, please like, share, and subscribe with a click down below. I'll be trying to make more better videos. See you in the next one.